Fire Emblem Engage, it's a game about killing guys, but what if you didn't want to kill guys? What would be the minimum amount of units you would have to kill to beat the game? Today, that's what I wanted to figure out. I wanted to try to beat Fire Emblem Engage while killing the least amount of units possible. Why is this hard, you may ask? Well, because I'm usually only killing one unit, the boss on every map. Most of my units are going to end up being extremely underleveled. I also can't do any paralogs, as I would have to kill units to beat them. An additional rule is none of my units are allowed to die, and also this counts Lynn's clones. I will be using the DLC as it actually allows me to defeat one less unit than if I didn't use it. Like the video if this interests you, and let's start on the prologue. Here we kill Sombron, that's it, nothing special, we kill him, that's the map. Chapter 1 is a route map, so unfortunately we must defeat most of our enemies. The only optional kill is this unit right here that dies in a cutscene, and because of that I weaken him to gain a little bit more EXP. When Alir acquires the Marth Ring, I just let him kill everyone. He gains a nice level up, and we move on to Chapter 2. Here we see a nice taste of why this run makes the game different. As to begin the map, I have to run up to avoid the 2 units near Lumara. From there, I slowly wait out until I've got an opportunity to attack her. I steadily do this while retreating, then I finish Lumara off, and she heartlessly kills the 2 units I have carefully tried to keep alive. On the second part of the map, I've got to awkwardly move around this axe fighter, and I move up in order to bait out Lumara on the next turn. I now do exactly that. As for this map, and most future maps, I really want to end the map as soon as possible, as I don't want to get overwhelmed. With a hit from Vander on enemy phase and a shot from Clan, Alir is able to move in and end the map with a Lodestar Rush. Chapter 3 is a route map, and unlike future route maps, we aren't put on a timer due to reinforcements. Fortunately, it being a route map means it's one of the only maps in the game where we can gain a somewhat significant amount of EXP. This EXP should all be fed into Alir, as units other than Alir will quickly be outpaced by later units, as they cannot gain EXP fast enough to catch up. Despite this, I end up giving a lot of EXP to Alfred, and this rewards me with a typical Alfred level up, where he gains 0 stats of value. This map isn't that noteworthy, but the next chapter is our first real look into the challenge of this run. On Chapter 4, the easiest way to go about it is to defeat the boss as fast as possible. To do this, we need to carefully push north with most of our army and use a Sigurd Engage to quickly move towards the boss. On the next turn, I bait out the boss, and I position Saline to be able to move in on the following turn with a Warp Ragnarok. I perform this on this axe unit, and on enemy phase the boss moves in to attack Saline, and she retaliates for a big chunk of HP. Something else of note for this map is my units near the bottom left are getting swarmed by enemies, and they are just barely able to survive. I even had to unequip weapons to prevent them from accidentally killing units. Anyway, Saline now lands the final blow on the boss to beat the map. Chapter 5 is like the previous map, but like twice as hard, as we will get swarmed by units if we don't push towards the boss fast. Fortunately for this map, we gain a little bit of help. We can now buy one of every tonic, and we have a few stat boosters to distribute. For this map I used a Draco Shield, Talisman, and Energy Drop on Alir, and I used a Speed Tonic on Saline, as well as a Magic Tonic and a Spirit Dust. For turn 1, I have Alir with Sigurd hit the door, and I have Vander help break it. Saline now chips down this knight to gain some additional Bond EXP with Celica to help her reach Bond level 3 for turn 3. I now place my other units for survival, and I survive enemy phase. Vander now buffs Alir with Sharena's Bond Ring's fortified defense, and he runs up to attack this sword fighter, and then he canters 2 spaces right to bait out the boss on enemy phase. My other units position for survival, and on enemy phase, Alir dodges a mage to guarantee his survival. The boss and the caverns move in just the right spot, where the place below the boss is blocked from the left and the right. I use an override with Alir, and with the energy drop and spirit dust, Saline is able to swoop in with Warp Ragnarok to get the kill and also learn Resonance. This may look like a suicidal play, but usually the boss is one of the first units to move, and because he sees a kill on Saline, he attacks her. She has to dodge here, but with rewinds we can pretty much guarantee this. And with all the boosts we've given her, she just barely is able to one round the boss, and we now beat the map on turn 3. Chapter 6 was pretty hard. The fog limited our movement, so we couldn't gain full use out of Sigurd. For this map, we have 2 units to defeat, one obviously being the boss, and the other being the guy with the Makai ring, because if you don't kill him, the boss becomes invincible. I tried to remedy the problematic fog with a loom with Yunaka, but even with that, finding the boss was difficult. My main plan for this map was to run up to the boss with Louis, because his defense is so high that most enemies just won't attack him, and he can somewhat safely reach the boss. This didn't go as planned, and the axe fighters that actually dealt damage started to set up chain attacks, and Louis quickly got surrounded and I had to reset. I then tried doing a similar strategy to this, to no avail. I just couldn't find a safe way to the boss. Even when I got close, this archer blocked the way. So I now thought of a new plan. This was to use Chloe to use Warp Ragnarok to block this sword fighter. And this allowed Yunaka to move up further, and with a loom I was able to see the boss. This allowed Louis to move safely out of range of the axe fighters, and he could now actually reach the boss. But in order to win, he had to land 2 lucky crits with his newly acquired Killer Lance. He landed the first one, and I had to get pretty lucky to survive the deadly mage and all the surrounding enemies. I now moved Louis around to get some damage from momentum, and he landed a crit to end the map. In the Somniel we gained 2 OK weapons, and we also gain the only DLC emblem that we can acquire, and it's very good too. On chapter 7, we must split into 2 main groups. One just struggles to survive and distracts most of the enemies, while the upper squad must make a mad dash towards Hortensia to kill her as fast as possible. For the lower squad, we just have to pray that they stay alive, and Saline needs to be in range to attack Hortensia when the time comes. Also, Chloe also has to go on a solo mission to also be in range of the boss. With the defense boost from Sharena's Bond Ring, Louis has just enough defense to take no damage from the Cavs. Most of the units now completely ignore him, and Hortensia moves in. Now he just attacks her, and with a crit, that's 1 HP bar down. With Warp Ragnarok, I reduce her next HP bar, then with a Raging Storm, I'm able to move in with Chloe to get the kill with Houses Unite. The last 3 chapters were pretty hard, but chapter 8 is much easier. I start the map by moving Chloe in range to bait out Ivy on turn 1. My army is just positioned to block enemies to the side, and we survive the enemy phase. On the next turn, I pretty much did the same thing as the last turn, but this time I bait out Ivy with Ult Crest. I now just retreat with all my units to stall for turns, so they can get just that little bit more EXP. I now use Diamant to finish off Ivy's first HP bar. Next I attack with Lapis to get some extra heal EXP with Valir. Finally, with 2 Echoes, Citrine finishes off Ivy and we beat the map. Chapter 9 is another easy one. I just have to use Rewarp to move near Jade, and from there I heal with Valir and bait out Ivy with Amber. Then I send in Amber with Override to both handle her first HP bar and to prevent the Chi Adepts from chain guarding to prevent future attacks. I now weaken with Fallen Star, and I end the map with a shot from Ult Crest. Between chapters, I promote Alir and then reclass them to Thief. I did this to be closer to obtaining Pass that I anticipated would be very good, but this came at a slight side effect of cutting Alir's EXP gains significantly. Like, he gains no EXP now. Anyway, chapter 10. For this map, I want to minimize the amount of units I deploy, so they won't be an issue on the next map. I start the map by quickly picking up a Draco Shield with Chloe, while my other units position for a Rewarp. I now move Chloe and use Rewarp. Amber now engages with Sigurd to move up, and I begin to fight Morian with Alir. Amber now runs up to Hyacinth and crits him to take out a HP bar. Shortly after, Alir uses Raging Storm to take out Morian's first HP bar, then he follows up with Atrocity to take out the second. Amber narrowly survives the enemy phase, and now I just crit Hyacinth one more time to end the map, and we move on to one of the harder maps for this run, Chapter 11. This is actually the first map where we don't have to kill anyone, but in order to do this we need Assembly Gambit that you can inherit from Edelgard. Overall, it's a pretty useless skill, but for this map, it was the only way to win without killing anyone. Right, to start the map, I send Alir in range of the flyer with Marth, and Jade, Chloe, and Amber, who are force deployed, must hide near the right. On the next few turns, I continue to move Alir down to keep distracting the flyer with Marth, because if they attack Jade or Amber, they will die. Now Alir is close to the bottom of the map, and on this turn, they are far down enough to trigger the reinforcements. These are extremely hard to deal with because they are mostly comprised of backups, and basically none of my units can survive if they're swarmed by all of the units at once. I now use Assembly Gambit to clear a way to the escape tile, but I just ended up resetting as I didn't think I could win. I now got a good run going, and I got to the point where Ivy appears. Since there's less enemies on the right side, by positioning carefully, making good use of Obstruct to waste enemy turns, and using Bonded Shield to improve survivability, I was able to survive this enemy phase. Next I just had to use a Gambit to move the Archer off the escape tile, and then I needed to place a unit that would not retaliate on the Archer adjacent to Alir so they wouldn't kill the Archer on enemy phase. But a huge problem I was facing was that I wasn't able to escape if a random enemy just moved on the escape tile. So I positioned like this, as I'm blocking a few spaces where they can attack me with my own units. And with Obstruct I could pretty much guarantee a path towards the escape point. This enemy phase was pretty scary, Amber was at risk of dying, and if I got unlucky some of my southern units could also die. Fortunately, I get lucky and Alir escapes to end the map. Chapter 12 is one of the first route maps where reinforcements are the main problem. If they show up, we will have to kill them, and we'll lose this challenge. So I've got to proactively kill all enemies on the map before these reinforcements appear. But this map, the reinforcements show up at the end of turn 3, so that's our time limit. Fortunately, the enemy units on this map are quite weak, and Alir swiftly deals with the mage and Candace in position to bait out both the wolf knight and the warrior. Ivy takes out this axe fighter, Amber crits the sword fighter, and my OE is now positioned for the next turn. During enemy phase, Alir crits the warrior for a one-shot and he weakens the wolf knight. He now uses Raging Storm to finish off the wolf knight, then he takes out an additional enemy and is in range to take on the final enemy on the next turn. Yeah, so I just heal up for a little bit of XP and end the map by defeating the final enemy. On chapter 13, we face a large amount of enemies on the way to the boss, along with tight choke points making advancing very difficult. So I quickly retreat all of my units into this choke point, and I eventually use Astral Storm to trigger the bosses to move. I now use a Thicket to make it so Alir faces 0% hit rate against most enemies, and he now chokes that point. Marin and Tamara now hold the other choke point and sustain themselves with vulneraries. Pretty much now, we can patiently wait for the bosses to be in attacking range. When they're in range, I engage with Edelgard and attack with Failnot for its free range. After a few shots, I defeat the first boss. I now hold my ground and attack a few units for that little bit extra EXP on Alir, and eventually I kill the boss to end the map. On chapter 14, I've reset to the previous chapter because of this mage right here, who has exactly a 2% chance to hit me. So I needed one extra point of speed to make sure he would never hit me. My idea was to get this from cooking a 3 or higher speed meal, and at the time I thought resetting to the previous map was the only way to reroll the RNG, but you can actually reroll it by rolling a bond ring, so this second attempt was completely unnecessary. Fortunately, I managed to get a little more EXP this time around, and that's the only real difference. Now we move on to chapter 14 for real this time. Alir now easily moves to the top right of the map, and most enemies just completely ignore him because they can't hit him. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to reach the chest with the boots in time, and the thief steals it. I now run into these pillars and I safely fire off Astral Storms to weaken the hounds. But I quickly realized that I can't actually damage Marnie, so I reset the map, and this time I have forged up a dagger that can actually kill her. I now get the kill on Zephyr and begin stacking up Speed Taker. I now pelt Hortensia with Astral Storm and I get another stack of Speed Taker. For Movia, I get close and aggress him with my strongest dagger to poison him, and then I chip him down with my Avoid dagger. And with another stack of Speed Taker, nothing can hit Alir, so he just weakens every enemy on the map for EXP, and when I feel satisfied, I hit Marnie with my strongest dagger to stack up poison. From there, I just had to hit her a few times with my Avoid dagger until she eventually died. Chapter 15, the second map where we don't technically have to kill anyone. For turn 1, we just move towards Cedar, but on turn 2, we have to swiftly push up. I now cover my back with obstructs, and I use Kagetsu with Ike to distract the lower enemies. On the following turn, we recruit Seedal, and then I just position for survival. Now we can actually start trying to win. So first I have to open a few doors because I want to minimize the amount of units that are rushing towards me. And by using Byleth's extra magic range, we can break this door without baiting out the enemies in that room. After uncovering the room, I engage with Alir, and I use Fallen Star to effectively make him invincible for the next round of combat. And now all enemy units will completely ignore him, so I warp him over the wall and I break open the next door. Now Cedal and my warpers need to push down. This isn't that easy since there's a lot of enemies there, but Zelkov can kind of hold them off. With Pass, Alir pushes through the next room of enemies and he breaks open the final door. I have a pretty close enemy phase here where Zelkov was fairly likely to die, but he gets some lucky dodges, and I now warp Cedal over the wall, and I also warp another warper, Hortensia, to warp Cedal again. This places him on the escape tile, and now he escapes to beat the map. Chapter 16. For this one, we want to beat the bosses as fast as possible, so we don't get overwhelmed. To do this, I use Astral Storm to trigger the bosses to move. I now send Kagetsu south to stall the southern enemies, and on the following turn, I use Zelkov to hold the center choke point, and I use Obstructs to help Tamara survive the upper units. I now steadily hold my position with Tamara handling the upper units, Kagetsu taking on the lower units, and Zelkov holding the middle lane. While doing this, Alir moves towards Movia to quickly take him out. With an attack on enemy phase and player phase, I take out his first HP bar, and on the next enemy phase, I get a lucky crit and finish him off. Conveniently, Marnie moves in range for Ivy to attack. I activate the chain guards with Alir, and then I buff up Ivy, and she one-rounds Marnie's first HP bar. With an attack from Rosado, Hortensia can get a lucky dodge to finish the job, and I beat the map. On chapter 17, I have to send Alir right to quickly take out Marnie or Movia, as if Alir achieves 2 stacks of Speed Taker, he will be able to avoid all enemy attacks, as long as he's in a thicket. Anyway, I now swiftly bait out Movia with a Astral Storm, and I retreat into the thickets. Movia now moves in range to attack, and I quickly deal with his first HP bar. Briss now uses Dark Warp to deal a huge amount of damage to Alir, so he has to heal up. Now I set my sights on killing Briss, so I switch to Peshkats to both deal more damage and to avoid counterattacking the mages. With Briss defeated, I quickly fight Movia and obtain another stack of Speed Taker, meaning Alir will no longer be attacked by the mages. So I now quickly bait out Marnie into using a Blazing Lion, And now it is time to slowly whittle down her HP. With her down, I execute an Astral Storm to bait out the upper units, and they now charge at me. Aaliyah needs to be in a forest to have a guaranteed chance to avoid the sword cavs, but I still want to fight the bosses, so I circle around the map and get in position to deal with both Vale and Zephyr. With the final 2 stacks of Speed Taker, Aaliyah can never be hit with his Avoid Dagger, so I weaken a few units for some EXP, then I finally engage Hyacinth and I easily kill him. Chapter 19 is a pretty easy one. On turn 1, I move a few units towards the boss to set up for a boss kill on turn 2, and I use Fog to safely keep my units alive. I position Ivy here with Sigurd so she can loot the chest on the next turn. My units safely survive enemy phase while baiting out Linden in range to be recruited. Hortensia now recruits him, and then Rosado smashes the hero out of the way to clear a fast path towards the boss. With a few dances, Aaliyah reaches the boss, and here he has to crit with Amir to take out 1 HP bar. Ivy now picks up the speed wing, and unfortunately Aaliyah is 1 strength off 1 rounding the boss, but with a crit I take out the boss's final HP bar and end the map. On chapter 19 we have 2 objectives. One is to defeat the 2 bosses, and the other is to farm a large amount of EXP on my healers, as most of my units are at their base level, and on chapter 22, units other than Aaliyah actually have to fight. I open this map by using Zelkov to plug this choke point, and now no units can really threaten my other units, apart from a worm, but they get unit blocked, and they can't really move to a tile where they would be threatening. So yeah, now all we have to do is wait until the bosses start to move. But while we do that, we perform our second objective for this map, and it's to farm a huge amount of EXP. We can do this by placing some of my units in range and healing up the damage. I do this a lot, like a lot. The end result of this is most of my healers gaining about 10 levels. While I was grinding, I gradually wore down Movia with Aaliyah, and he was pretty easy to kill. Marnie took a little more effort to beat, but she was still easy. I just have to attack with Byleth's boosted range and Ivy who can safely canter away. Yeah, now I just killed Marnie to end the chapter. Chapter 20 is a map that I try to just solo with an unhittable Aaliyah, but this doesn't work as there's a mage that can actually hit him. So I play a game of cat and mouse, where Aaliyah tries to run away from the mage, but eventually I just give up on this, and I just go for an easy warp skip. I quickly uncover Gris, and then I use Astral Storm to weaken him, and I finish him off with Saphir with a killer axe. He now teleports up top, and I follow him quickly with Micaiah boosted rewarps. I now dance Hortensia and Seedal with Byleth, and I attack Gris with Aaliyah to chip down his next HP bar. With a rescue, I send Kagetsu in range to pick up the secret book, and then I finish off Gris and beat the map. On chapter 21, we pretty much have to warp skip it, as we need to have units deployed for the next map. And if we just soloed with Aaliyah, we would be unable to beat the next map within the turn limit. So I use some rewarps to move up to Vale, I debuff her with Corin, and I begin to attack with Aaliyah. Then I danced with Byleth, and now I take down Vale's second HP bar with a Houses Unite. Aaliyah now finishes off Vale, and we immediately proceed to chapter 22. One of the toughest maps for this challenge. So why is this map so hard? It's a route map, so we can freely kill every unit we want, so it shouldn't be too bad, right? Well, the problem is the reinforcements that show up at the start of turn 5, and if they appear, we will have to kill them, making us lose this challenge. Fortunately, if we move fast enough, they don't appear. The exact condition to prevent them from appearing is to collect every single ring in that 4-turn time limit. And this is even harder when you realize that you need to effectively waste a turn with Aaliyah just to activate the rings so you can collect them. What's more is a lot of my units are mostly untrained, so cutting my ways through the Hordes of the Corrupted was not going to be easy. So let me walk you through one of my first good attempts at this challenge. So immediately on turn 1, I rescue down Aaliyah and attack this Corrupted to immediately activate the first set of rings. Ivy now cleared out a Corrupted, and I used Rescue to move down Seedal. He now dances Aaliyah. Hortensia now follows up on this by warping Aaliyah down and left. I now clear out the other threatening Corrupted with Zephyr, and Aaliyah attacks a Wolf Knight to both kill him on enemy phase and to activate the next set of rings. On enemy phase, Aaliyah is the only unit at risk of dying, and he doesn't come close. For the next player phase, I clear out the mages on the top part of the map, and I use Obstruct to make most of the paladins attack Saphir. Aaliyah activates the next set of rings and almost dies on enemy phase. Aaliyah now picks up a ring, and my other characters clear out the cavs, but this all doesn't matter, because on my first few attempts at this map, I thought reinforcements appeared at the end of turn 5, but they actually appear at the start of turn 5, so you can imagine the heartbreak I felt knowing that I had to do all I had currently done in one less turn. So I had to rethink my strategy, and I replayed the previous chapter to adjust some things. The biggest change is I reclassed some of my units to Griffin Knight to be able to give them access to warps, rewarps, and rescues to help speed the map up. Anyway, let's start my winning run. I begin by doing a very similar opener as last time of activating the first 2 sets of rings, taking out the 2 axe-wielding Corrupted but this time around I moved Kagetsu down and I used Fallen Star to make him invincible. I survived enemy phase and now Alear activates the next set of rings, and Kagetsu now rewarps in range of the third set of rings. Meanwhile, my upper units rely on Saphir to clear out the enemies. After another safe enemy phase, I send my upper units to deal with the troublesome worm, in a position to do a lot of rescues and warps on the next turn. I now send Alear to collect the Ike ring and Kagetsu to collect both the Sigurd and Erika ring, and he canters to move to safety. We survive enemy phase, and now on this turn, we have to collect the remaining rings. I begin the turn by warping down Hortensia, and she rescues Alear to place them in range of activating the rings. Saphir clears out the annoying flyer, and now I rescue Hortensia to safety. I then dance her and warp her down with Ivy. She collects the 3 rings and canters to move up. Linden now rescues her, and she is now completely safe. Kagetsu now collects the final ring, changing this map's objective to route and preventing all reinforcements from spawning. From here, the map is significantly easier, as I can take it at my own pace. Alear barely survives enemy phase, and I now rescue to move him in range to protect the rest of my units. Mavia and Ivy successfully distract the enemies coming from the north, and Kagetsu moves next to this mage. On enemy phase, we take out a few units and weaken this mage so Kagetsu can finish them off. From here, it's smooth sailing. Taking out the northern enemies is simple. With the units with free range gone, Alear can easily solo the southern enemies. The only side objective I have is feeding Saphir some EXP, because I will have to use her in the future, and some extra levels could be nice. Yeah, so eventually we route the map to beat the chapter. On chapter 23,
we have to defeat Sepia and Gris.
At first, I tried to do this by using Saphir to support Alear with terrain from Korin, and just dodge tanking for everything. But unfortunately, this is one of the few maps where enemies come equipped with L-Surge, making this fairly ineffective. So we just warp skipped it. To do this, we warp Alear towards the left, and we position to re-warp on the next turn. I re-warp here, and to do this I needed 2 flyers, which is why Alear has been reclassed. I then re-warp again, and now we need some good RNG, as we pretty much have to crit almost every attack to kill both Zephyr and Gris in one turn. First I debuff Gris and then attack with Raging Storm. With my extra action I attack Zephyr, and land a critical hit to take out a HP bar. And now Bile of Dance, then use Houses Unite and attack Gris again. Thanks to a crit he dies, and with another crit Alear takes out one of Zephyr's HP bars. I now dance Alear, and with Seedol's speed boost I double with a Killer Axe, allowing me to kill her, ending the chapter. On chapter 24, we use Micaiah to build a wall to protect us while we position for a boss kill. We then re-warp down and dance to re-warp again. I then debuff the boss and begin to attack with Veil. She's slightly off 1 rounding from full HP, but with Echo we have more than enough damage to take down a HP bar with a single action. With another 2 attacks with Echo, I take out their final HP bar and end the map. Chapter 25 is pretty much the same as last map. We re-warp over to Lumera, debuff her, and then Veil attacks, and attacks, and attacks one more time to beat the map. On chapter 26, in true anime fashion, we must channel the power of friendship to have any chance of winning, with Hortensia offering support with Korin's terrain, and Saphir giving us support with chain attacks. Additionally, they are both avoid boosting supports, so at A rank they give Alear 10 avoid each when they stand adjacent to him. This allows us to attain high enough avoid that all enemies will not attack us, and that's perfectly what we need. I begin the map by letting Saphir get hit to drop her below 50%, to activate her personal skill to boost her avoid by 20, and now weaken the healers so they keep healing themselves until they run out of uses. Next I move adjacent to Sombron and slowly whittle down his HP with powerful attacks from Georgios and weak attacks from Saphir. I land the final blow with Alear and we move on to phase 2. Now, like what we did in phase 1, we have to attack the healers until they've run out of uses of physics. But unlike in phase 1 when we're almost done with the physic users, more healers equipped with Recover appear, and we have to make sure they can't heal either. A problem I had here is I wasn't paying attention and I attacked one with self-destruct. It dropped them in range to explode, so I had to use a rewind. Eventually I find out that I don't have to make every unit run out of uses of Recover, just the ones in range to heal Sombron. This was much easier to achieve and I finally moved on to actually attacking Sombron. But the problem we face is he has Fell Barrier plus that prevents all damage. And because of this, we unfortunately have to kill 1 Dark Emblem, right? You'd think that was the case, but this skill actually doesn't affect chain attacks. So yeah, by channeling the power of friendship, we can damage someone with a mighty 2 damage at an impressive 30% hit rate. And I'll do this for a very long time, so long in fact that I will request you to comment how long you think it took me to beat the map in the comments. And while you're there, click like and subscribe. What was kind of annoying about this whole process is Sombron's laser attack can actually kill me, so like every 5 turns I have to move out of the way. So yeah, now we're about to kill Sombron, and would you look at the turns? Turn 420. The perfect time to end the map. I attack with Alear, but Saphir misses the chain attack. So I now attack with Saphir, but Alear misses. Well, surely the next 2 chain attacks won't miss. Yeah, I didn't achieve a turn 420 win, but on the next turn, we get the kill. I now sit through the battle data, and it's quite interesting to see that at the start, we played most of the maps quick, but around the midway mark, we grinded on a few maps, and some maps we grinded for quite a long time. Overall, this was probably the most fun Engage challenge I've done. It significantly changes how you play most of the game, and it made even the easy early game maps into a tough challenge. The worst part of this run is mostly just the grinding, which probably isn't necessary, but even without the grinding, the final map is especially painful as it took me 5.5 hours to beat. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, and bye.